What you think about that? What you think about anything? What you think about you? What you think about me? What you think about that? What you think about that? What you think about anything? What you think about you? What you think about me? What you think about that? I get so sick and tired of faking all the moves. I know everything that comes between us. I'm gonna let you stew.
Well, hey, surprise, right? I'm gonna miss that song, I think. Is anybody else? Yeah. Drew actually covers it. This was Drew over here on the keys today. He actually plays it for fun sometime. So you might hear it. I don't know. We'll bring it back. Hey, my name is Kia Redder. And if you are kind of newish around here, this is not my job usually. So that's why it's just kind of silly. And I've got the microphone and it's really weird. I am the music and communications director here, and for some reason, somebody thought it was a great idea for me to kind of get us started. This is our final week in the You Asked For It series. We have been, if anyone's been counting, it's been 10 weeks up to this point. And so this is week 11. We've been here since July, and we have covered all kinds of ground. So back the beginning of the summer, we said, hey, what are the things that you want to know? What are the things that you are interested in hearing more about from a spiritual perspective, from a God perspective, whatever. And so you wrote in questions, and so we've just been kind of working through them. I don't know if it's because Ryan didn't want to pick topics or something. He's angry today, so I don't know. But yeah, that's what we've been doing. And so today, like I said, is our last time, and I need to catch up on my slides. I'm not used to this. So what we're going to do this morning is we're just going to kind of wrap it up. We're going to squeeze the last bits of life out of this thing. And so we're going to do a rapid fire Q&A, a little bit of a discussion situation. Somehow they thought that I was the person who's going to keep Ryan and Brooke on track. Wish me luck. So let's do it. Let's get Ryan and Brooke out here. Yes. Okay, so we're going to sit because sitting is better. And we're going to have some conversations. You guys and your bow ties, I love it.
Can't say it never happened.
I know. Brooke brought this up months ago, and we thought, what better time than to look very smart?
I forgot my glasses.
Even if we're not, just at least me. And so we can look the part. Maybe the sound will go off. And people, oh, those must have been two really smart people up there in Kia. We tried to get Kia to wear her bow tie, but
I left it at home. Sorry about that. Okay, so hey, we've got Brooke over here. We've got Ryan over here.
We've got Kia right here, who's also going to be engaging in these topics.
Sure. Who knows what's going to happen? This is going to be a surprise for you, just as much as it is for us. Okay, so we're going to spend maybe 5 minutes on a question. There's a whole lot of questions. We're not going to get through them all, right? But basically just kind of scratch the surface and acknowledge, there's a lot to unpack in all of this stuff. And for us to sit here and be like, I have the answer to this deeply complex theological query, that's just not going to happen. And so we're just going to kind of scratch the surface and let you know, hey, there's a lot more to unpack here if you're interested. So let's start with a little practice round. Okay, so we've been in this series for 11 weeks. Why? I mean, besides the fact that you didn't want to pick topics on your own, we've acknowledged that. Why was this series necessary? What's important about what we've been doing?
What do you think, Brooke?
I have lots of thoughts.
We'll share them.
Yeah, I think the first reason why we wanted to have this series is to let you all know that we don't know, and that questions are welcomed. I think so many times when you're raised in the church, questions are not welcomed. Doubt and curiosity in these things are pushed aside. I can think about many times in my own experience when I asked why, and I was very quickly shut down. And so I think really it was just to create conversations around, hey, like, we want to have discussions about the things that are on your mind, and we don't know. Like, the reality is we don't live in certainty here. So A, to have a safe place for questions to land, and B, to engage in conversation. There's a reason why on our website you're not going to see a list of all of our doctrines and beliefs. There's a reason why we engage in the curiosity and questioning, and we really try to not land in a like know-it-all mentality. So questions welcomed, and we don't know.
Yeah, that's good.
I think she nailed it.
Yeah, I don't
I don't
The
think
only
you
thing
have
I would
anything
add
to
is
It's the bow tie.
yeah, that's
It
the bow
helps,
tie
it
talking.
helps.
The only thing I would add is I think a series like this helps us learn how to think and not what to think. And so that for me is really important, especially in terms of spiritual development and just emotional mental development. It's like too often times settings want to tell us what to think versus how to think and how to engage with complexity and how do you ask the right questions of the question itself, which is a difficult thing to kind of do in a world that especially wants to just give you those answers.
Okay, so one question that somebody wrote in verbatim is the legitimacy of heaven and hell, question mark. So that's the question.
Well, I'm glad we started with the easy one.
Yeah, we're in about 5 minutes or less. Check this out. Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes.
Who asked this question? Raise your hand.
Can
and
you
own
please
it.
stand?
How about
Okay,
this?
the
How many of
timer's
you-
going.
Maybe
Ready?
you didn't ask the question, but you're really curious about like these ideas of heaven and hell that maybe you grew up with one understanding of them, but you're kind of questioning that yourself. Anybody? Oh, so that's kind of a relevant question. Brooke?
I started last time.
I should have gone first. I get this question a lot. I get asked, do I believe in heaven and hell? And so I have to, again, question some of the questions. This question, I want to first of all say, someone is not asking, do you believe in the afterlife, right? That is not the question. The question isn't, do you believe something happens when you die? This is a question about, and people are generally asking about very specific, very literal concepts of heaven and hell. And they use the word believe. Do you believe in these things? Okay. So for me, this is not a good question on a fundraising day, by the way, Kia.
Hey, I am sorry.
So this
I
is
didn't know you were angry.
yeah. I believe in one thing. I believe in love. Okay? So that's what I believe in. And because I take the word belief seriously, now I'll use the word belief in sometimes, but from a theological perspective, in the sense that this is where I put my hope. This is where I make decisions around money. This is where I make decisions around time. This is what I believe will offer me a salvation of sorts. This is what will heal me. This is what will heal my relationships. So my hope is in love. I believe in love. So do I believe in heaven and hell? No, because I don't believe that those concepts have the power to change or shape or heal. Okay? Now, what about the legitimacy of these ideas? I think that I'm not a literalist, so I think that they are legitimate concepts that humanity has always wrestled with. And the question of heaven and hell is really a question of justice. And that's at the heart of this question. Is God just? What happens to people who are awful? We see this in the letter of Revelation, of how long? And the voices of the martyrs, like crying out that vision, right? And it's a question of justice. And so I think at the heart of the question, like, I think there is justice in our world. I think, and I'm not talking about retributive justice, but distributive justice. But then I also think that the ideas and the concepts of heaven and hell are very real, even though I might not take them literally. What they stand for and what they hold and what they represent is true. Like, hell exists, but I'm worried about the one on earth. Like, that's the one I'm worried about. Like, that's the one that I know I can actually participate in keeping people out of, right? That I can actually participate in extinguishing. I personally do not believe in a literal hell. I've said this over and over again. I don't believe in eternal conscious torment. I cannot justify that with the vision of God I see in Jesus. And this is the scary one for people, so don't hear what I'm not saying, is I also don't believe in a literal heaven of streets of gold. But I do believe in what heaven represents, this hope of space and fullness, this hope of peace, this hope of no more crying and no more tears. And I believe that is possible. And by the way, I don't believe that Jesus ever talked about these things either. I think these are concepts that go far beyond and came to us much later than the life of the historical Jesus. So when Jesus would talk about the kingdom of heaven, he was not talking about something far off. He was talking about something that was very present. And so that's where I live and how I think about these things today. Like, it might change tomorrow, you know. I might have a dream and write a book about it, you know.
That would be an interesting book. Yeah, I don't necessarily have a lot to add. I think the first place my mind goes to in like that question of the legitimacy, is it real, is my first thought is like, well, does it change how you live your life? Because when I think about my experience and I think about like the pain that I've experienced from the church in the name of like heaven and hell, especially as a queer woman, right? Or I think about the way that I live my life. When I think about the way that I lived my life in my 20s, when I was very much in a state of certainty and believing in a literal heaven and hell, it absolutely motivated how I lived my life. I wanted to go to heaven, and I assumed anybody that wasn't like me in my faith was going to hell, and so it led to very much an othering. So I think when I hear that question, it makes me just question maybe what's underneath it, not from a place of shame, but it just, I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes me just wonder, like, well, do you need that to exist? You know, like if it doesn't, does that change something for you? And I think I also just go to like recognizing like the deep pain that that idea has caused. Like, well, if you don't look white and straight, then you're probably not going to go to heaven. Sorry. And, you know, like just, but living into like the pain of the messages that get told in the name of like sanctification, that's one to write down for later, or just this idea of heaven, right? Or this idea of hell. Like I recently went to a church not like ours for fun. But the language was very othering. It was us versus them, and it was very much this heaven, we're here, and like, so I think there's just so much othering embedded in it, and it just makes me like, well, does that need to exist in order for you to live the peacemaking path? I think that's where I just go, because like the farther away that I've like walked away from like the legitimacy and the certainty of that, I have found so much more like love in my interaction. Like I don't know. So I guess that's my question. And I think I just want to acknowledge the pain that that has caused.
Yeah.
Like I have been
That's really
very,
good.
like it haunted me for years. Oh my goodness, I am queer. I'm going to go to hell. Like whatever the before, like I sinned, I drank alcohol, I listened to music that had drums. Like these were real things for me. And so I think that there's such a disservice in that idea, especially on like young people. That's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one little thing. I actually don't believe, I believe that 99% of the people who profess to believe in hell don't. I just don't, I think the fruit of their life would say otherwise. If you believed in hell and the way it's taught, you wouldn't sleep. You would spend every waking minute of your life telling every person you love. You would be the most annoying person on the planet, because you would do that out of love if you really believed that to be true. Like you psychologically couldn't exist. Like our brains aren't wired to hold that kind of tension. Like that's why we can go out and cross the street, is because we can actually compartmentalize the danger of getting hit by a car, you know. So I actually, on the other side of it, like I think when people tell me that, I was like, I'm just trying to be honest enough to say the fruit of my life says I don't believe in that the way you do. So I'm just gonna honestly claim that, right or wrong.
Yeah, there's so much fear in the language on both sides. What if I don't go to heaven? What if I go to hell?
What if they're in heaven?
Therapy. Therapy.
Therapy. It's true.
Okay, so we need to move on, but I do want to say this. Ryan, you mentioned the scary book of Revelation.
Yeah.
If you haven't been around Crossroads very long, I think it was last summer, we did the Peacemaker's Guide to the Revelation. Was a whole
light summer series.
Summer burning fires of hell sermon series. But truly, and don't let this go to your head, but it was like one of the most like, life change. I don't know if it's life changing, but just like poignant, thought provoking, like really eye opening sermon series that I have ever experienced. And you guys, I'm a PK. I studied this. Like my undergrad was in this. So like.
She's a theology nerd and just doesn't
I
want to show
am.
it.
I'm nerdy.
I mean, we all kind of
truly,
are. Let's just live into that.
Truly, like if this is something that has been said thus far, like piqued your interest, I highly recommend checking out Peacemaker's Guide to the Revelation. You can find it in the Crossroads app. You can find it on our YouTube channel. All this stuff is linked up there. If you're just let me know. This is the communications director and me coming out. But I really highly recommend going through that. Okay, so setting that one aside. Okay, so next question. How to invite people to a church like ours, period. You guys really need to work on your grammar. Come on. Okay, so how to invite people to a church like ours. A church like, there's a lot even in the question, right? So like, our church does not look like a lot of other churches. Can I get an amen? We sound like a lot of like evangelical churches, like the music or like the lights or the fog or whatever. But it's weird today, isn't it? It's a little foggy in here. But we also. Oh, why did you put me on stage? I don't know. But the things that we talk about are very different than some of the things that other churches who look like us talk about. Or vice versa. If you look at churches who kind of share our theology, they definitely sound different and look different than we do. So why would we invite anybody to our mess? Number one, I guess. Why would we invite anybody to church? But then it also gets at like, what's the role of the E word, evangelism? If you have been around church, if you've grown up in church, like, does anybody remember evangelism explosion? EE?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, like
That's a phrase I have not heard in a long time.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep
feel
you
like
up
Obi-Wan
longer
Kenobi there. I haven't
at
heard
night.
that in a long time.
Go and make disciples. What does that even mean? You know,
Yeah.
we've been given this great commandment. We've been given this great commission. What does that look like in our context? Ready, set, go.
Yeah.
So after church today, we're going to gather in the lobby, and we're going to be knocking on doors. Ironically,
Peace
that's
is
what I
worth
did
it.
for like a decade. Yeah, I grew up in a very, the tradition in which I was raised was obsessed with evangelism. And like there were some great things. Like I feel like I could probably have a conversation with a rock because like I really did knock on doors. No, it wasn't Jehovah's Witness or Mormon. But anyways, that's another topic.
Well, hang on. For the people who are new to church, what does evangelism mean? Because that's a super churchy word.
That is a churchy word.
What does that mean?
Yeah. To evangelize, or this word evangelism, is the idea of like in the name of heaven and hell, right? With that kind of as an undertone of, saving. We got to go save the people. It's based off of some verses in Matthew where Jesus calls out to go and make disciples, which there's a lot of beautiful language in that, but it is this idea of like we need to go out into the world and invite people and tell them to turn from their wicked ways and come into the church and come and be with us, look like us, talk like us. So it is this idea of, whether that's knocking on doors or sharing a pamphlet or giving a Bible study or whatever, telling your coworker, etc., to challenge them to leave their life of sin and come to a life of holiness. Which might I say, like, on the topic of inviting, like, I think there's a lot of actual beauty in invitation, but I think it's, like, what is the reason, right? Like, if you have this idea of heaven and hell, or you think that you know, or that you're the best, or we're the best, or whatever, then that invitation is not really like an invitation. It has an ulterior motive, all sorts of things. So, like, when I think about my day-to-day life and my interaction, obviously, as like a queer woman, people ask me what I do, and a part of what I do is working here. So that's going to spark some conversation. If you didn't notice, it's not normal in the world. So, but I think like for me, when I think about my life and I think about this great place that we have, is I'm going to live my life of peacemaking. And I'm going to let people, like, ask or whatever. Like, I think that there's a lot of, like, danger in telling someone how to live their life. I think there's a lot of danger in saying, we know, so come here. I think that there's a lot of pain in a lot of that. And so when I think about, like, I love our church, I love this space, I'm very passionate about, participating in this, obviously. And I would love for more people to come. But it's not up to me to tell them that. It's not up to me to think that they should be here. So I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to, be a peacemaker in the world, and I'm just going to, wait for the opportunity, which, surprisingly happens. People are like, well, why? I remember a guy was like, well, I don't even believe in God. Can I go there? And I was like, great, please. We would love that. Come tell me what you think. There's no pressure, right? Because we don't have this, agenda. So in my mind, live your life, be different, show love, speak love, and let that attract people, or let it not, right? It's ultimately up to them.
That's good. I'm supposed to add to that? Yeah, the word itself comes from a Greek word that just means good news. Evangelia, it's just good news. And it kind of goes back to where Jesus reads from the scroll of Isaiah, and he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. And again, I don't know that the historical Jesus ever did this, but our story of Jesus and telling us how Jesus understood himself was, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to go and preach good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind. And so you have this passage in Matthew, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which I highly doubt the historical Jesus ever said, because concepts of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and he said baptize in my name, but we took that and baptized in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But it's a very much comes out of the emerging church movement. Now I'm sure he was a rabbi, so going and making disciples was a very common thing, was just to go and show people my way of seeing God, my way of understanding the world, invite people into this way. I certainly believe that the historical Jesus would have invited his disciples to do that. When we have this passage where Jesus says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and take my yoke upon you. That's a rabbinical idea. The yoke of the rabbi that you would take on, and that would be to live your life in the way that rabbi saw. So it's a very, very Jewish Hebrew way of understanding that invitation. And what Jesus was saying was, you have this yoke that's heavy from what you're trying to follow, to understand God and to believe in God and to do all these religious things, but I'm offering you a different yoke that's light, my way. So it wasn't just like, oh, come and cry, but it was like, come and live a different way of being faithful to our understanding of God. So I think evangelism gets twisted and in church history has been used to grow a religion and a power structure as opposed to actually inviting people into a way of being in the world. Evangelism has been, I think, hijacked as this idea of getting people to believe the way we believe, follow our rules, give your money to promote that, and then we're going to go for it. And it all starts with, in American Western evangelicalism, certainly American evangelicalism and evangelistic pattern. It's this idea of inviting Jesus into your heart, a cognitive understanding of Jesus in our way, versus, I actually want to invite people into this peacemaking path. And what you actually believe about God, interestingly enough, was of very little concern to Jesus. This will blow your mind if you never really thought about it. But Jesus said the greatest faith he ever saw was in a Roman centurion who was at best polytheistic. He said to the Samaritan woman who was on the mountain, asking about making sure that I worship the right way, Jesus is like, well, whether you worship on this mountain or that mountain doesn't really matter. Just worship in spirit and truth. He felt no need to offer her correct theology. Isn't that interesting? So I think we invite people, the specific question, we invite people into this church by inviting people into a life of love and peace. And we listen, like Brooke said, I think it's brilliant, wait for the question. Don't answer a question that's not being asked, right? Wait for the question. Look, there is an opportunity where people express in relationship pain and hurt or frustration or questions about God, right? And I think you can also speak very naturally. You can speak of the good news in your life. Right? I hope that a lot of you have at some point in time the opportunity to say, I was having whiskey with my pastor the other day. And you get to say that to a friend. Or you get to say, I was talking with Brooke, our associate pastor, and she was telling me about her wife and their new baby and blah, 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 blah. And you can normalize the beauty of this place and what this place offers, because I do think our souls are hungry for meaning in this world. And I actually believe that our church is set up in a really beautiful time, because I think the disillusionment with doctrinally based religions is on a slow burn out, which is beautiful. But there's still going to be a hunger and thirst for righteousness. I think that exists in us. We long for justice. We long for those things. And we long for the big questions of the idea of God. And so to just have that space, I think, is really amazing. And I think it's going to be long after me. But I think we're sowing seeds of being a really powerful spiritual safety net, because I've lived in parts of the country and have done ministry in parts of the country that are farther along in that deconstruction and farther along, and it just moves in, by the way, from these coasts. Like, that's how culture spreads in America for the most part. So I think the natural idea of it, and here's the thing, I was told growing up, I don't know if you ever told this, Kia, maybe you were, like, if you know you're supposed to share your faith with somebody and then you don't, like, that's the devil. That's the devil telling you, like, and they're, don't listen to the devil. I actually have a totally opposite opinion. I'm like, no, that's God telling you, shut your mouth.
Intuition.
Like we're taught in so many of these spiritual environments to not trust ourselves. And Brooke did an amazing talk on this, that no, like, why would the devil be inside of you? I mean, it's the idea of it alone is just built on such a faulty premise. Like, that little voice inside of you is not the devil. It's you. It's like you're trying to do good, right? There's a part of you that's like, I want to love this person. I want to see the best for them. And then you have something inside of you that's like, hold on. And you're like, get behind me, Satan. like all of a sudden you got possessed by the devil, So, like, I actually think, go with that voice. Like, don't say anything. It will be perfectly appropriate and right and natural. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't, in every season of our lives and in every moment, be ready to give an account for the love we've experienced, and be ready to give an account for the goodness we know. I think those are beautiful ideas.
One of the things that Ryan has said before that I think is so perfect for this conversation is, don't invite people to church until you invite them to your table. Mm-hmm. And we use a lot of table language around here. Table just being like, you break bread with somebody, you have a conversation with them, you get to know them. That's where God is. God is in that. God is in that table. That relationship, build relationships with the people around you, build relationships with your neighbors. And that, if they come to Crossroads, cool. And if they don't, you haven't failed. Mm. You're in the world. You are doing the peacemaking work that we talk about all the time. And I think that's really important. Okay, super, super quick. Did the resurrection really happen?
Another great question on a fundraising day to ask. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Who went first the last time? You did?
That was definitely me. It's all you, man.
You get 2 minutes. Go.
What do you mean by the word really? I would say that the resurrection really happened. I would say that historically speaking, it's a historical fact that followers of Jesus experienced him after his death as alive. I think that is historically kind of undeniable from the literature and from the witness that we have. Now, if you're asking me, did it happen literally? Was there a literal body? Like, how did the resurrection happen? What was going on in the grave? If there was a camera in there, what would we have seen? Which, by the way, nobody saw. Like, nobody saw that.
Zombie Jesus.
Zombie Jesus. What
That's
did that look
like? That's a great Halloween outfit.
Zombie
I've
Jesus.
seen like a zombie Jesus
Lord help
sticker,
us.
and anyway.
Sorry, Ryan. I don't
Sorry.
mean totally
Zombie
anyways.
Jesus.
And I think history tells us in the fruit of this question that the resurrection happened because lives have been changed by it. My life has been changed by the concept, the story. So I think when we talk about the word really, I would affirm it really happened. Now, if you're asking me, did it literally happen? Is it metaphorical? Was it a spiritual resurrection that people experienced, not a physical body? Like, was it a spiritual thing? Did Thomas literally touch his hands? Things like that? I have no idea, first of all. So I don't put my faith in that. So when people will quote, well, Paul says, if there is no resurrection, then there is no hope. And I would say within Paul's framing of his world and what he was, that makes perfect sense. But I disagree with him if Paul is saying, without the literal physical resurrection, then we have no hope. I would say without the resurrection, we have no hope, because the resurrection is the crux of it all. The resurrection is our tradition saying God chose nonviolence over violence. God chose the way of forgiveness over bitterness. God chose the way of love of enemy over murder, over killing. God chose the way of listening, right, over talking. So the resurrection is our hope, undoubtedly, and I celebrate it all the time. I also deny it all the time when I don't live into violence or nonviolence, when I don't live into peacemaking, right? And in those moments, it didn't really happen, right? So I think it's a challenging question. I just want to be honest that there's no like physical evidence. Like we don't know. That's a faith proposition and how we engage that. So I would answer the question: yes, it really happened. Did it have to be literal to be effective and change lives and give us meaning? I don't think so, personally.
Ditto. I also, I think and when I think about my own experience, which is the only thing I can really speak from, like, that question has actually never been on my mind.
Yeah.
Like, if it did, like, awesome. I'm really jealous I didn't get to see that, because that's wild. I don't know about you guys, but seeing someone die, come back, like, that's wild if it really did happen. Like, a lot of curiosity there. But I think, like, for me, like, the symbolism of it, like the metaphor that we can take away, what does that actually mean in my everyday normal life? How does that impact? How does that create newness in me? I think that's where my mind goes. I don't necessarily have maybe much to add to the actual question, because I think when I think about from my own train of thought, it doesn't matter. I think that goes back to the same, like, with the heaven and hell thing. But I think for me, like, the metaphor of it, like, there's so much in that.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of thoughts on that, but not right now.
And the concept of the resurrection is really important in penal substitutionary atonement theory, if you're familiar with that concept. So I get it. I'm not that person, but it's never been a big question for me. But when the question started being asked, I thought it was a really beautiful question, because it really brings to the point of, what do I really believe in? And I go back to where I started. My hope is not in a literal physical resurrection of this person, Jesus. I don't believe that will, oh gosh, I'm going to say it. That doesn't save me or our world. Love does. What that story represents, and if I'm willing to take up my cross and follow him, which might lead me to the grave, there will be resurrection. That my life, my death will have meaning and purpose, and the kingdom is built through it. So that I hold as dear and believe deeply, and I'll be, now that it's out on, I'll be called a resurrection denier or whatever, I don't know. But it's just the way my brain works, I think, and my faith works, that they could come to me with DNA evidence that Jesus never died or that Jesus died, and my faith would not be shaken by any of those things, right? Or they could say, these are the bones of Jesus. I'd be like, could you get them away from me? That's gross. Like, that would be my response, because my faith is not built on that. Like, my faith is built on love. It's that simple, you know?
We are like way over time today.
Oh, good.
For the Sunday.
Well,
in
that was
general.
because I was begging for money earlier.
I know.
Sorry.
Gosh, Ryan, I had so much to say.
Angry Ryan begging for money. So we're gonna put a pause on this. Not to like throw you guys under the bus, but I think there's like some live social media.
Yeah, we talked about some of these
stuff.
questions that
There's
we
a
can't
lot
get
more
to.
questions
We talked about
can't
trying
get
to do some, like, sit down together and do like a live, like, quick 5-minute answer to some of these questions. If you have a question that we haven't talked about, we'd love to talk about your question. And so you can text that to me or write it on the back of the Connect card if you don't know what texting is. And we'll do our best to like try and work that into the workflow. And we think it'd be good to have these conversations and relate why the question might be important to what's happening in our world today as well. So.
Yeah, and Brooke, quick plug. for Fresh
Just
Perspective?
gonna do it.
Oh, good.
That was great. We planned that.
Hey.
Yeah. So also just to mention, not obviously today because 9 a.m. has passed, but next Sunday at 9 a.m. we are starting a new series of Fresh Perspective. My phone almost took itself. Anyways. So Fresh Perspective is going to be starting on next Sunday, and if you have questions like this, if you have questions about God, if you have questions about the cross and sin and the Bible and all of these questions that probably made you come here, we're going to be talking about those every single week. So Sunday morning before church, if you grew up going to Sunday school, this is the group for you. Just kidding. I didn't, so... but it's going to be Sunday morning upstairs. There on the app is all the information. It was a series Ryan actually did a couple of years ago. So it's going to be a place where we're going to be having conversation, and we're going to be engaging in conversation and sharing experiences and talking about the complexity and the pain, to be honest, the pain that a lot of this has caused. So next Sunday, 9 a.m. upstairs, I will be there, no bow tie, coffee in hand, and we'll be continuing this conversation in person. So... yeah.
Check box on your Connect card.
Check box on the back of your Connect card. Let me know that you're interested. You'll get an email with some more info.
Love
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Hey, will you all show some appreciation for Kia and for Brooke? I really appreciate both of them, their leadership, their gifts and their talents, that they're here, so that's wonderful. So we want to have communion this morning, as we always do. We know it's late, and so we recognize if you need to go and do your thing today, there is no guilt, no shame, any of that stuff. In fact, I'm sure some of our children's ministers would love for you to leave early and take your kid with you. For those of you that want to linger and have a candlelight, communion time, don't. Go get your kids when we're done here. But we're going to have communion together, which is a great mystery. And so it's good to kind of end with this. So if you are a guest this morning, if you're here for the first time and you're like, oh no, this is the part that I'm not allowed, I haven't taken the class, I don't know if I believe all this stuff, you are welcome to the table. I don't know if I believe all this stuff, if that's not clear. I certainly don't have it all figured out. But I think if you would say that you believe love is powerful, you kind of get what these symbols are ultimately about. Extraordinary, radical love given in the body and blood of a person who believed deeply in the poor and the marginalized and the hurting and the oppressed, all the way to the cross. And our story didn't end there. Our story goes on to say that this Jesus, who we crucified, was raised to life. And that life is a life of inclusion and grace and love and challenge. And these are difficult things. It is a life of repentance. It's a life of understanding where I have fallen short of love's requirements and demands of me, and to do better when I know better. But this table reminds us that there's no shame in that experience. There's no condemnation in that experience. We come to this table as people who are wandering through this life, committed to love, and believing that the greatest reality, what we call God and what other traditions might call something else, is love. And that the best representation we have of that, our God in flesh, Jesus, died on a cross to model for us just how far love has to go. And so you are invited to the table today as we sing this beautiful song that God is bigger than our hopes and our dreams and our fears. And in the darkest moments of our lives, love is there calling us. So the body of Christ broken for you, the blood of Christ shed for you. If you are at a table, serve yourself. If you're here on the sides and the bleachers, you can come. We'll sing this song and we'll get you out of here only about 20 minutes late today.